Alright guys, so this is the Corbett Lunsford interview, and if you guys don't know, Corbett, he built a tiny house on wheels, and we just kind of discussed what he did, the reason why he built his tiny house, and some of the things that he had to go through in building it. It is a long interview. We wrapped it up a few minutes ago. It's probably the longest video that we've done since the electrical video. So I will say it is a long one, but if you guys can hang in till the end, there's a lot of information in there. Corbin is very passionate about what he does, and that really comes through in the interview. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and do the housekeeping right now real quick. Keep sharing the videos, keep liking, commenting, subscribing. The comments are really important. They let us know whether we're going in the right direction for you guys or not, if we're doing things that you like or doing things that you don't like. And keep using that Amazon link. All those things really help us. So without further ado, we're going to hit the intro real quick and we're going to go right into the interview. Alright, so as I said in the beginning of this video, we're doing our interview with Corbett Lunsford. He has a interesting project that he undertook. I think, was it 2 or 3 years back, I think, Corbett?
The U.S. tour, yeah, it was 2016 is when we did that.
2016, okay. And what you guys did is you built a basically a RV or camper for yourselves, from what I could tell.
Yeah, it was the world's highest performance tiny house on wheels. For us, we wanted people to come and want to tour through the house, and the whole point was to show people a house that worked really well, that had its HVAC system tuned to the air sealing and insulation layers and had ventilation and all this different stuff. So, you know, if we had gone around in an RV and put out a sign saying, "Hey, do you want to tour our RV?" probably wouldn't have worked as well. So, you know, it's like, do you want to see my tiny house? Of course, we love tiny houses. So we kind of capitalized on the fact that people love tiny houses. We don't particularly love tiny houses. I happen to think the smaller the space, the more dangerous it is, and the more important that there's a tradesman somewhere in that house who can take care of things, because the air quality is obviously the thing that we're mostly concerned about. So in the tiny house, we had 2 cats and a baby and a composting toilet, and 2 adults slept there every night, and it smelled great. It didn't smell like a dirty sock or like a litter box or like poopy diapers. And that was because we had, you know, affected the pressures in the house to tune the home performance, which is what we're trying to get people to understand for their bigger houses.
Okay, and that's what you do, isn't it? You go around and do home performance testing and well, I guess why don't you tell me what you guys do?
Sure. So yeah, it basically, if you think of, there's home inspection, which everybody knows what that is. That's like static state stuff though. And then there is obviously HVAC is a big part of your show. And HVAC is half of the picture, especially if you're including ventilation. And you know, I hope that your audience is paying attention to ventilation as something that should be under the HVAC umbrella. I find that a lot of electricians install bath fans, for example, which is not a great idea. So anyway, we try to tune the 3 invisible dynamics inside homes, which are physics, chemistry, and microbiology. So if you can tune all of those to be harmonious, then you have a home that's going to smell good, feel good, sound good. And if you have not tuned them, then you have these problems that generally people are going to call an HVAC professional first. Whether or not that HVAC tradesperson who lands on the ground has the time, the training, the equipment to be able to diagnose a whole home as a system problem. For example, if you have a problem like the water heater is spilling, it might be because of the range hood in the kitchen, or it might be because of the attic fan in the attic. You know, it might not have anything to do with the water heater itself or with the chimney. So right. That kind of interaction, you know, that people are generally familiar with at the beginning of their thinking about building science gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and I'm still learning about it all the time.
It's a constant struggle from inside as well. Like you said, just getting those a lot of guys will call them nuisance calls, but I mean, the customer's calling you out for a reason. You know, they do have a problem. And like you said, you got to have that training, and that, you know, time is a big one too. You know, if you've got pressure from the office telling you, you know, you got 5 more calls you got to get done, you know, that's something that a lot of people just, unless you're in it, you don't really understand it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say it in I hope a sympathetic way, but it's like the reason that most HVAC guys show up at a house with their shirt untucked is because they literally do not have time to tuck in their shirt, because you guys are run so ragged all day long with emergency calls and then these nuisance calls that you were describing, which are my favorite. I love the nuisance calls because people are like, you know, we've been working on this for 5 years and we haven't figured it out. Nobody knows what to do anymore. That's my favorite thing.
I like those too.
Yeah. But I think, you know, there's like this, you know, lots of us have eaten an entire hamburger at a stoplight because that's your life. Like you eat in your vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can do what our goal is to transform the construction industry, so new home improvement and new construction, so that it's a more thoughtful, more well-paying job with more time, so that you can actually stop and think and not look like you're wasting time. For example, we just shot 3 episodes. We have a television program called Home Diagnosis. And the cinematographers who we work with will literally stand there. They'll set up their cameras and then we'll get it framed up. And then they'll stand there for 2 or 3 minutes just doing this. And it looks like they're just killing time, but they're looking at stuff and thinking about shadows. And, you know, that those moments of stop, think for a second, you have to steal those. Like you got to claim those if you're going to get them, because your boss, as you know, is not going to say, hey, I want you to really be thoughtful today and just take a little bit more time with each job. Like that's not going to be a popular thing amongst the employers. So we need to figure out how to fight for that.
Okay. Well, now that we've got a good background on what you do, what is the Tiny Lab and why did you guys, I know you kind of described it a little bit in the beginning there, but you know, what is it and why do you guys call it that?
Sure. So we came up with the idea. We thought we've been trying to teach people about how building science works, and if we can teach normal people how this works, then HVAC professionals and builders and architects don't have to sell building science to their clients. If we can get normal clients, customers to come to you and say, I would like my home to work better. Now we don't have to sell them. It's like, I don't have to explain that a setback thermostat isn't always a good thing for performance. It's a good thing for energy efficiency, but not for performance. And that is a fine line. We can get it as, you know, nerdy building science stuff later. But basically, the Tiny Lab was our way to not just talk about it, but bring people inside of a space. So
Everything okay?
Yes, everything is fine. Do you guys have kids?
No, we have 4 fur babies.
Yeah.
And the one came running when your baby started crying. He hates when he hears crying babies. He's got to try to find it and make it feel better.
Nice, that's nice. Yeah, we have 2 cats. So essentially what we did is left Chicago and wanted to build a house that we could show people, which building a tiny house on wheels, which we had just become aware of this fad of the tiny house. We saw a documentary about it. We said, that's it. That's how we see the country, teach people about this stuff. It's going to be great. And we wanted to leave Chicago at that point anyway. So we basically moved into my parents' house in Florida, built in their backyard over 5 months. I worked 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day building this thing. It was good practice for the house that we're building now, which is 3,000 square feet. But basically it was always, the goal was to build something that was high performance, meaning tuned, so that the air always smelled good. It always felt perfect in there. It sounded great. And if you think about how hard that is to do in a big house, it's much, much harder to do in a small house. So for the first thing that we had to do was make it as soundproofed as possible so that it would be quiet. That's for a couple of reasons. One is that, the space is very small. So if you make any sound inside, like if you had, for example, a noisy air conditioner in the house, you would be bothered by that when you're trying to sleep.
Sure.
If you had a compressor running inside of a normal dehumidifier, you would hear it pretty loudly. So we had to select the equipment very, very carefully. And then we also had to control for noise coming from outside, because we put ourselves in parking lots all over the country. But the crowdfunding thing that we did was that we kind of basically teamed up with contractors in various cities and said, hey, if you want to bring us to town, we'll bring the circus and the entertainment, and you can take credit. Everything that we do interview-wise with the newspapers and on TV and radio and all that stuff, and people who come will see your logo and know that you are the one who represents this scientific approach to homes in your local market.
Kind of like a race team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically we had 20 cities that we did for a week solid. Then we added 14 single day events where we would do just little lectures or open house tours all day, things like that. And basically had people in our house 7 at a time during open house tours, and closed the door. And the first thing they would notice is, I can see the train going by outside, but I can't hear it anymore. That's weird. It must be super insulated in here. And people would, say, oh, how much insulation is there? Not very much, less than in your house. It's not about insulation. It's about airtightness. And then they'll go, whoa, what's airtightness? Like, well, I've never realized that was a good thing. I always thought houses needed to breathe and you didn't want to build too airtight. So kind of a lot of that myth busting that people have in their heads about bigger, like, my neighbor has a 5-ton air conditioner. I only have a 3-ton. I want a 5 because I want to be as good as they are, right? That kind of ridiculous thing. My neighbor's snow melts off their roof faster than mine does. I want to make sure that mine melts too.
Yeah.
So any of that silly stuff that needed to be myth busted, that was kind of our goal. And then showing them we had cats, we have a litter box. We're not geniuses. I'd never built a house before. So our message was, if we could do this, any builder, any professional could do the same work. We had a ductless mini split. Most people hadn't seen ductless mini splits. I'm now more of an advocate of both. Like, I've always been an advocate of both systems, but a ductless system has its own particular weaknesses. Like we had a 1/2-ton unit, and the sensible latent split on that is 95%, 5%. So you need a dehumidifier in a tiny space. And I don't know what systems they're using in RVs, but I guess what we saw when we looked into RVs was that the systems that they built were not serious, like performing systems. Like, you would never install an RV system in a house, for example. Like a lot of the stuff they give to you guys for those purposes are made for a house that's made of fiberglass and like, it's kind of, we wanted to have something that was like a house, but on wheels, basically. And so that's why we chose not to go with an RV or a trailer.
No, you guys definitely built something that I think I forget the name of the video that I was watching the other day. I should have written it down, but where you went through and just described all the materials that you guys used. And I mean, you've got something far and away better than anything you could ever buy. There's no doubt about that.
Well, that was one of the sidelines too, because people, they always have an illusion about prices. And so they'd say, how much? Like, I actually had one woman get out of her car, not even come over to stand in line to see inside. She was just yelled at me from the car, how much? And I was like, well, if you had not done any of the labor or gotten materials donated, then this would be $125,000 house, which is $600 a square foot. And she just like, because she saw on TV that you can have a tiny house for $20,000. And I had people approach me and say,
can.
You think you can build this for $5,000? And I'm just like, you could build a $50,000 tiny house, but you would not want to live in it. And just saying that straight up, that will be a crappy house, period. You can't do that. And so we wanted to also pop people's bubble about that, because they teach people on TV ridiculous, stupid stuff that's not true. Because it's TV. It's not supposed to be educational. It's entertainment value.
Right. I mean, you're saying you could build one of those for $5,000. I think the trailer that you've got yours sitting on probably costs $5,000 at least, if not more.
That's absolutely correct.
It's what? I think 16,000 pound rated axles, if I remember right.
Yeah, actually mine is 14. There's 2 7,000 pound axles, which is handy because we came in right around 13,000 pounds when we were done. It was heavier than I expected. when you add so many screws and all this stuff. RVs are made out of stuff that's supposed to be lightweight and road ready, and we built out of 2x4s and screws and insulation and normal stuff. So it was a little heftier than I had planned on it being, but the balance works out really well, so that the truck that we pull with, which is a dually 3500, it isn't messed up by the ratio of front trailer. We dead where the axles level all the time and not pull up on the trailer's hitch, on the truck's hitch rather.
Okay. I mean, is there so I think you went you went over how long it took to build it, and you guys lived in it for, it sounds like, close to 6 months. Is that right? Because you said what, 20 cities 1 week each, and then
we still live there actually.
You still live there?
Yes, I'm talking to you from my parents' cabin, which is behind our land. But yeah, we've lived there for 3.5 years. It'll be just about 4 years, maybe 4 and some, when we move into our big house.
Okay.
So yeah, now with our 2 little girls, we set up 2 pack and plays every night, and then have to break them down in the morning. But it's like we engineered it for our own needs, so it really works well. We have a diaper changing table that folds down, and the works. But yeah, we still live there.
Okay. Did you guys have to do anything to get it like certified or anything like that so that you could live in it, or anything special with, putting it on the road or?
Right. Well, so it's a vehicle technically. So you don't get a building inspection.
Okay.
You get DMV inspection, Department of Transportation, DOT, I guess. So it's certified as a travel trailer. That's what it is, as under the license. So it's got a license plate on it. It is illegal to live in a tiny house on wheels. Like, that's why it's on wheels, is so that you can run away when they find you and they say you can't live there. You got to move out. So there's really no way around that, unless you go in front of your local city council and make an appeal and just say, hey, and give them some reason. Our reason that we went to city council and said was that we had bought this land. We got a couple acres here in this small town in Atlanta. And we went in front of them and said, hey, we want to build a house. We're going to do it ourselves. And we'd like to live in this tiny house while we build. And they kind of discussed it for a minute. And they said, basically, it's like if I bought a trailer just to live there while I was building my house. Yeah, it's great, fine. And so they gave us permission to live in the house while we built our bigger house. But they don't want you to live there because it's tax dollars. Like, they don't.
Right.
They make a lot of money off of our 3,000 square foot house, but off of a 200 square foot house, they're not going to make hardly anything in taxes. So they didn't want to do that.
Right. And I think I think the way Charlotte is vehicles are taxed differently than houses as well. So it's like a different bracket. So they want to get you into that higher tax bracket.
Right. Insurance wise, most people agree that, like, RVs are seasonal or recreational vehicles, right? So they don't want even the manufacturer of the RV or the trailer will not certify living in it 12 months out of the year, because it's just not what it's designed for. So I think, I think in some respects it's interesting, the idea of an RVing tradesman, because you've got somebody using a technology in a way that it's not meant for, but you can tweak it for sure. That's not a bad thing. It's just, like, part of the message that we, people like us within the building industry always are telling people is, like, don't try to make one thing do more things. It's like asking your air conditioner to do all the dehumidification in the house.
Right.
Now we've got tight houses. We should really have the air conditioner do its job, which is cooling, and then have a dehumidification system doing dehumidification, and not ask one thing to do the air filtration, the ventilation for the whole house, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, your blower motor is going to go bad. All this stuff is going to happen because you're asking one thing to do more than it is designed to. But there's obviously, all the innovation comes from people doing things innovatively with the same materials. So anyway, as a broad conversation, I think that's really interesting.
It's kind of like I see people that have like those multi-tools, like the Leathermans and stuff like that. You get a decent pair of pliers and then like 10 other tools that are kind of a piece of junk.
Really? You know what? I recommend this one. I do not endorse these guys, but it's a Wave, and I wear this every day. And almost all the tools on it are great. I've actually sawed through 2x4s on my build site with the little saw on it. If I'm just like, the saw is all the way down there and I don't want to climb down the ladder, it works pretty well. But yeah, I agree with you in general. That's why, shopping for quality is also something that people don't do naturally. You have to be trained for that. Is this your baby? Yeah. Thank you. I just got this.
Oh,
Thank you.
Well, you always need one of those.
Yeah, right. I know. This is my buddy for my interview. She can sit with me. Thank you.
we're keeping that in. I know in one of the videos you talked about you guys kind of designed the Tiny Lab to be off grid. I mean, how off grid is it? I know you have solar panels and a composting toilet and
Yes. It was designed to be totally off grid because we did not know where we were going to be. We actually boondocked one night out in the desert outside of Las Vegas, and it was terrible. I think that people, I don't know if you guys are off grid, but I think people have this fantastical notion about what it's like to have solar, and they think, well, so plumbing wise, yes, I know. So plumbing wise, we're off grid, which means we have 50 gallons of water that we can carry around. That's not drinking water because we want to treat that tank with chlorine to make sure the stuff doesn't grow in it. And then we've got, we have drinking water that we just filter with a Berkey. And then we've got the composting toilet and a gray water tank that we drain into just the shower water and stuff. Gray water is not poisonous. It's not, toilet water. So yeah, all that stuff makes us off-grid plumbing wise, which is good and bad because it means I've emptied my pee container over 1,000 times now. We've lived there for 3.5 years. So every night I empty the urine from our house, which is like, there's a romance in it, but I don't know. It's probably long gone by now. Anyway, the electrical side really means that you have to have solar panels and batteries, and then also a generator that can run on gasoline. And I run that generator on propane too. So I've modified it so that it can run on propane or gasoline. And then as a last resort, as a first resort rather, I have a direct plug into the grid if I can get it, which I always would rather do that. Because once you've been off grid a little bit, you realize that you become a farmer for energy. You're just working all day long. You go out and first thing in the morning and you position your solar panels so they'll be pointing right at the sun when it comes up. And then you don't use any electricity that you don't need to. And it's like, can I make a smoothie? No, you can't. It's a cloudy day. And then if the sun is
cloudy day,
bro, it kills you. Yeah, it's not good. I have solar panels still, and I've got a solar panel system in the Tiny Lab, and it has been unplugged for 2.5 years. I don't use it at all because it's just way more complicated than people are told when they say, oh, solar is great. You're going to love it. You should get some. It serves certain purposes, but I think that in general, it's not nearly as helpful as you would think. It's not a one-stop shop. So yes, it's off grid, but I always prefer, if it didn't have to be off grid, I would absolutely not do it that way. But it does help be able to pull up. I'll say this. This is something that's interesting. What's your amperage on your, what do you need to plug in as a master plug on your
it's
RV?
a 30 amp.
30 amp. Okay, great. And a lot of people who have fancier ones are going to be 50 amp.
Correct.
Ours is 15 amp. So I can plug our entire house into one normal 120 volt, 15 amp plug, just like you'd plug in a toaster, and I can run everything in the house at the same time on that. And that was slightly intentional and also slightly accidental. Like we kind of made it with that. I had not, in my wildest dreams, assumed that we would absolutely get there, but we did end up getting there, which means that I can go around and meet somebody and they're like, hey, if you want to pull up into our driveway, I'm like, great, do you have an outlet at all? And I can just plug right in, which was much more helpful. I didn't really want to stay in RV parks nonstop, which is the only place where you can get a 30 amp hookup, as you probably know.
Yeah, No, that is really helpful. I mean, I think my air conditioner alone is like 17 amps,
Right.
you know, so I couldn't even probably turn on the blower motor without, tripping a breaker
Yeah.
just from the initial startup amps. So that's pretty
Right.
cool.
Yeah, that's where this inverter, the half-ton mini split that I've got on the house really works well because it ramps up. So it starts at like 1,300 BTUs per hour and then ramps up from there as it wants to. So that soft start really helps.
Yeah. That's a Mitsubishi Hyperheat too, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to put one of those that's identical to that 200 square foot tiny house. I have an 800 square foot studio space that's in the big house, and we're going to use exactly the same piece of equipment over there. And then I'm also going to have a ducted system that's in the main body of the house. That's 2,200 square feet.
Okay.
Cool. Cool.
That is good info about the solar panels though, because I know a lot of people want to go that direction with them, and I think you were even saying you have some of the most efficient solar panels that you could buy at the time.
Yes, it's true. And the solar, so the problem is if you have one inverter, and I'm not an expert on solar, but I will share this with you. So we have one inverter, 4 panels. So if I put all 4 of my panels out and they are shade, one of them is partially shaded, it kills the entire grid's power output because they're all linked together. So I need like 80 volts basically to be able to charge the batteries because they need to be at a higher, it's hard to explain in just short, but basically you need to have this certain voltage that's above, so because you're pouring water from one reservoir into another reservoir.
Right.
And so if the sun isn't shining hard enough, you could maybe feed your house, but you will not give enough to the batteries to fill them up. And once the batteries get down to about 30%, I'd say really 40% in reality, they're going to shut the system down. Even though there's 40% left in there, it needs enough just to be able to sip and power the charge controller and the intelligent electronics that'll like wake it back up. So if it goes all the way down, dead forever, basically. So anyway, as you deplete those batteries, they have charts when you buy batteries. My batteries, I only have 4, which is a tiny amount. They each cost $300, so it's $1,200 worth of batteries. And each time I deplete them down and then run them back up and then deplete them, it's a life cycle. And there's basically only like 3,000 of those in my batteries before I have to buy a new $1,200 set of batteries. And they don't tell you that when they do the cost benefit analysis, like you're gonna make back your money in 6 months or a year. They don't tell you that, but then you're gonna have to spend $1,200 buying new batteries, and that kills your savings for the next 2 years. Right. So that's why I just use it as a backup now. It's plugged into the grid. The grid powers my batteries in case the power goes out. I'm still good. But aside from that, and which is really important in a tiny house, I don't know if it's the same in an RV, but my composting toilet has an exhaust fan built into it. And if that exhaust fan dies because the power is out, then you smell compost in the house. So you always need to like have that active pressure unbalancing to make the house smell the way that it needs to be high performance. If I went around the country and the house smelled like compost, no one would want to. No one would be like, how did you accomplish this with your house? I want to do what you've done here.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's a high demand for that out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Where's some of the best and worst places that you've been with it? I know you kind of took it all across the country. You said 20 different cities. What's some of the favorites?
Worst, do you mean like aesthetically, or do you mean for the performance of the house, or for or what?
Both.
Yeah, why not?
Well, since I like to brag about the performance stuff, I'll tell you that we went all the way up the East Coast. We built it in Central Florida, went all the way up the East Coast, went across, and it rained basically that entire way up. which was very nerve-wracking for me. And then we hit Death Valley as well, and it was 110 degrees in Death Valley, and the house was perfectly comfortable and worked the whole time.
Nice.
And that is the difference between a travel trailer or RV and a house that's built with the same insulation and all that stuff as a normal house that has the same systems, right? So that
Right.
15 watts, 15 amps was able to power us in Death Valley at 110 degrees. And we had, comfortable air quality. We can have, it will out a little bit, but we've got an ERV, which is kind of a battery. You can think of an ERV or an HRV as something that buffers between you and the outside air. And so the ERV buffers that. So if you've got slight humidity inside and real dry outside, it'll take a lot longer for it to dry out and desiccate like the outdoor air is. Even though in this house, we exchange the air, all the air in the house, which is about, we'll call it 1,800 cubic feet. It's 200 square feet, 1,800 cubic feet of air. And my rate of ventilation is 30 CFM. 30 cubic feet per minute times 60 is 1,800. So I replace all the air inside the tiny house once an hour, 24 times a day. So it's pretty hard to keep it comfortable. You can imagine if you're parked in 110 degrees, that air conditioner would have to work real hard. But we've got a bunch of different layers in the enclosure helping to kind of cooperate with that HVAC system to help tune it. So yeah, Death Valley was awesome. I loved that. We went to the asteroid crater in Arizona or New Mexico. I can't remember which one it is. That was amazing. We went to Niagara Falls. We kind of joked that our favorite place on our U.S. tour was Canada because we went to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls, which don't even waste your time with the American side. Just go straight over the border. We got the ultimate pass at that park. But that park is really interesting since we've got, like RVers listening to this. I'm sure that many of them have been, but that Canadian side of Niagara Falls Park is a national park just like ours are, but they have taken no tax dollars since the late 1800s from the government. They make all their own money, and they have 2-star, 3-star restaurants right there on the falls. You can get like amazing meals. They've got bakeries and all this fun stuff. Like it almost felt like Disney World. I wondered at one point, I wonder what time they turn the falls off, because I'd like to like maybe eat dessert and watch it, But yeah, they have it. They're so slick.
That is definitely somewhere I want to go, and one of the main reasons why I got a passport was so I could go onto the Canadian side of Niagara Falls, because I've heard that it's so much better than the American side for many reasons. So you just make me want to go even more now.
Totally, yep. And that was one of the places that we stayed in an RV park in Niagara Falls. There's one like not too far away, and there's a bus that connects you pretty easily. But I'd say, we had a lot of weird experiences because it was a tiny house, not an RV. That was another thing that I wanted to do, is like not stay in RV parks, because that's a safe place. You can have a parking space, you can have 30 amps, you can have a plumbing, hookup. Since we had Offgrid, I was like, let's go meet people and stay in their driveways and like have dinner with them and do weird stuff. So, I mean, we just met people all over the place, and I got sick one time in Yosemite, but that was, everybody has that happen to them. Being sick on a road trip is pretty disgusting. But I think, it was just like a really interesting trip. Americans are not who I thought we were. I will say that. I thought we were slightly different than we are. I realized that so I'll tell you, I don't know, this probably doesn't happen to RVers, but with a tiny house, people assume that it's for them, that it's an entertainment thing. And so we would have people walk up and let themselves into our house all day long, every day, 7 a.m. at the earliest and 10 p.m. at the latest. People, they'll walk in, and then if they see you there, they'll say, "Oh, so tell me about your house here." And it's like, get out of my house. Like, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. What do you think? So anyway, that was I was a little worried about who we are as a culture, but we're just a lot ruder and more entitled than I had realized before we went on the road. And I'm an introvert, so it was having people talk to you all the time. Yeah, is like a little, and with an RV, I feel like there's one level of that, but with a tiny house, especially one that's made to be eye-catching like ours is, We asked for it, but also we had people just talking to us. One lady on the interstate was like driving, and she pulled up right beside me and said, "Pull over, I love you." And I was like, "Hi," and, so yeah, you have
Oh my
it's
gosh.
craziness. Yes. Tiny house people are a little bit more crazy than normal people who like to travel, and I think that got to me a little bit as we went. But we were really committed to trying to teach people, tiny house people, how they could build better too, because it's really dangerous. You can make your family pretty sick pretty fast if you're not careful about it.
Yeah. Kind of going back to what you were saying before, that when you make it smaller, it's a lot harder because it's got to be that much more precise. It doesn't take, it does, a little, just a little problem with carbon monoxide doesn't take that long to be a big problem, whereas in a house, a little problem with carbon monoxide can go undetected for, maybe
Exactly.
even a couple days.
Right. Or years.
Yeah. Or years. What's the I guess the craziest or the funniest thing that you've had happen
In the tiny house?
Yeah, in your travels.
Learning how the composting toilet worked was pretty hilarious, because we didn't know when we would have to empty the pee side of it. A composting toilet separates solids from liquids. That's how it dries out the solid,
waste.
The waste.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And turns it into compost. It's not a bucket that you pee and poop into. So you got the pee. Now I know you take it out every day. If you have two people peeing in it, one day, and that's it, and you take it out at night. So I took mine out in a newspaper, the only local newspaper in St. Augustine. In the middle of the day, I looked down into the toilet and saw pee backing up into the toilet. And the way that you take this thing out with our particular model is you have to like tilt it away from you to take it out. So you bring the bottom out first, which means you're going to pour urine all over your brand new floor. I had just finished the house 2 days before. We had just raced to St. Augustine. We started using the house. And so I was like so angry and yelling, and our baby was luckily asleep. But I was like, "I'm about to pour urine all over this floor. Give me some towels." And so I did it. And then I raced outside with a cap on the thing while Grace is mopping up the horribleness. And we're about to do a tour in 2 hours, our first open house tour.
Of course.
And so our house smells like piss. And I've got a gallon of concentrated pee, and I have to figure out where I'm going to dump it. Sorry, my kids are very active right now. So anyway,
Okay.
I'm like, I tried, I looked, there's a storm drain, but it's middle of the day. People are coming to class, add, list and do their stories and stuff like that at the newspaper. "Hey, baby, can you please stop screaming? Thank you." Anyway, so I had to get in my truck and drive until I found a strip mall, and I drove around the back and just raced out really fast without hesitating at all, because I figured being bold is better. And so I was just like, grabbed my gallon of pee and poured it out into a storm drain in the middle of the day. Nanette, please stop doing that. She's trying.
Oh.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Anyway, so I learned you do it at night after that. And then I'd say, yeah, just people doing crazy stuff. Every time I emptied the solid side, I'd like look around to make sure I'm nice and alone. First thing on a Sunday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. And of course, as soon as I turn it upside down and drop all my, the waste, the solid waste that comes out of the people who live in the house into a trash bag, somebody is right over my shoulder. It's like, "Hey, how you doing? Can you tell me about your house here?" So I was always yelling at people to "Get away from me."
I'm busy.
I am a little busy, yes. So yeah, I'd say we're happy not to be traveling in it anymore. That makes it a lot easier. But yes, living there still and enjoying it, and it works perfectly well if you tune it. And we have a course called Home Performance for Tiny Spaces, if your audience is interested in that. But it's kind of about how to think through all this stuff, because really it doesn't take. I don't have an engineering degree or anything like that. I was a musician before I did what I do now. I switched 11 years ago. So if I could do it, anybody can do this, especially somebody who's in the trades already. So yeah, we just basically try to teach people how to do that stuff, especially with small spaces, because it's important to think through that. But if it works in small spaces, it definitely works in big spaces. I just did the blower door test on my new house, and it's 50% tighter than, well, not quite 50%, but it's about half as tight as Passive House, which is the tightest building certification in the world. So we're very happy about that. But we keep trying to innovate how to explain this stuff to people. I think that's the big takeaway for me, is that it's always a journey.
Do you have any more questions, Monica?
Yeah, actually, what do you haul the tiny lab with? Is it a pickup? Is it light enough for like a Jeep, or how do you move it around?
No, we went serious. I was telling my family in this, and everything that I owned was in there. So here, I'll just give you the view so that you can have explained what is going on in the background and this noise. But anyway, we have
super cute.
We have a 3500 dually pickup. That's the biggest truck that you can buy. So that was fun. I'm not really a truck guy, but we were pulling through Texas, and I got to look around and say, "Ha, my truck's bigger than yours." It's totally impractical as a vehicle, like as a family vehicle. It's ridiculous, but it is nice to have it since we're building this house. You know, I haul stuff with it all the time for construction.
Oh yeah, sure.
But no, I would say people should not skimp on this stuff as far as the vehicles go. Yeah, it's because, you know, it's very dangerous. You're going 55 miles an hour. And we couldn't go any faster than that, because once you go from what you guys have in an RV to an actual house, vent hoods and things like that, like the vents that come out of the side of a house, if you go faster than 55 miles an hour for 8 hours straight, it's a hurricane, and it will rip that thing right off of there. So I actually had galvanized metal, hood covers tearing like paper, and I had to slow down. So 55 miles an hour is the fastest that we travel with that. But yeah, the dually really helps.
Yeah, I tend to overdo things. If it can be done, it can be overdone, in my opinion. So I'm the same way with like my truck and,
right,
tools and stuff like that. Like what are you going to need a circular saw on that trip for? Well, you don't know. We might need it. We'll just bring it with us.
Right, exactly. That's what the 8-foot bed is for too. We had the option to get a 6-foot bed, and we were like, nope, all the way.
Yeah.
Smart. Another question I have is, I know when Nick and I were first getting into the market for either a pop-up or a travel trailer, we were going to go with a pop-up, and we had just gotten our dog, Django, and he's a black lab. And the sales guy that we were talking with made mention that, if we were stuck inside for a whole rainy weekend or something, and we would be stuck inside that small, tiny pop-up with 2 people and a large dog, and, we would just kind of be sitting on top of each other. Have you guys ever run into a situation where you've been reined in and you've just been stuck inside with each other? Was it easier or harder than you thought it might be, or have you even run into that sort of situation at all?
Well, I think that's definitely why you have a vehicle that can fit all the people in it. Yes, when it rains, and generally always anyway, we would hang on once. So yes, we have no eaves on our house, and it's a house. So our windows are casements. They open like this. So we can't open the windows if it rains. So if it rains, then we have to have dehumidification for sure, because we're bringing in, like I told you, we're replacing all the air in the house 24 hours a day, once an hour. So we would need the ERV. We need the desiccant dehumidifier, and I have the desiccant one because it doesn't have a compressor in it, so it doesn't hum all day long and all night long. And then we would need to make sure that we are happy with each other and we have the air quality that we need. So I'd say having a vehicle to get out in and go to a coffee shop, or go to we used to go to indoor playgrounds with her if we needed to. Now we've obviously got 2 girls, and so it's even more necessary. But I think my thing, I guess, the only advice I'd have about pop-up versus something that doesn't move around is we have a dining room table that can lift and lower, like on a sailboat. And it's got wings that can go out and make it a full big diner table, or come in and it's more of a coffee table kind of a thing. And I swear to God, we have not moved that thing in 2 years. you just don't move stuff that turns from one thing into another thing. You're just going to figure out which you like better, and it will never change. So I think that a pop-up, to me, knowing how much work it is to set up a, pack and play every night, it's just like, oh God, it's bedtime again. I have to set up this thing. And I just think, anything that, like a Murphy bed even, I just feel like I don't buy it. I don't think that's really how it's going to work. I think people are going to say, too much trouble, and they're just going to leave it down all the time. And then why is it a Murphy bed,
Yeah.
Well, we have a Murphy bed in ours, and it sucks.
Does it? Okay.
Yes.
Down?
What's that?
Do you just leave it down all the time then?
We put it up, but it's just the way that it folds up and everything, there's just no support to it. And like you said, even changing it, it takes maybe 30 seconds to a minute to convert it from, the couch, because you got to fold the couch down, then you got to unfold the bed and out of the wall. And just that 30 seconds to a minute sometimes when you're pulling in late to a site or something like that, or you're coming back from a long hiking trip or something, you're just like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Why do I do this to myself?
Right.
Exactly.
But I think that's all the questions that I have. If that's all the questions that you have, Monica.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it.
Great.
The last thing that I have is just, where can everybody find you guys? Where can they find out more about the Tiny Lab? And I know you mentioned your TV show before, but just go ahead and, take a second to plug all your stuff.
Sure. Great. So we have lots of different places you can get things. Building Performance Workshop is our company where we do consulting, and we've got all our courses and stuff, but you can also get to those courses through Home Diagnosis television series website, which is homediagnosis.tv. And then our YouTube channel, which is our biggest thing that we really pay attention to, is called Home Performance. So if you search for Home Performance on YouTube, you would find that channel. And we have a Patreon account also, because we're, like you guys, trying to do a bunch of things that are not sanctioned or supported in a traditional way. So our Patreon account is also called Home Diagnosis TV.
All right. Any Facebook or Instagram or anything like that?
Yep. We got Facebook is Grayson Corbett Lunsford, and then Instagram is Home Performance also.
Okay. And as always, guys, I'll make sure Monica puts all those links in the description so that everybody can find them.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Nick.
Thank
Good to
you.
talk with both Nick and Monica. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You've been awesome. Thank you for giving us the time. I know you're super busy. And sorry if we were kind of bugging you with emails.
No, that's good.
That was mainly me. I was super interested in everything that you had going on. So I am super thankful that you took some time out of your life to talk to us nobodies and to help our show get just a little bit better.
Not a problem. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, take care.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.